Today's lighting is making my hair look extra frizzy. It's really highlighting the frizziness of my hair today. Haha! I've been wanting to talk about this little lady for a long time. Everyone please welcome in Ninnion and her tablet! Say hiya! Hiya! I am aware that I often talk to you a lot like your bairns. I know that. The tablet she left behind is one of the best and is actually the only depiction we have of the Eleuisinian Mysteries taking place, and we love her for that. I don't know Ninnion personally, she might well have been a miserable old witch, but we love and thank her for this dedication that has actually proven to be really, really useful and informative to us little modern uninitiates. So let me go on about it for 10 minutes or more, half an hour, 40 minutes, 2 hours, who knows. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll tell you all about it. The Ninnion tablet is an Athenian red figure clay tablet which dates to 370 to 360 BCE, roundabouts, thereabouts, whatever. It was rediscovered in 1875 at the sanctuary of Eleusis, somewhere within the ruins of the Telesterion. Eleusis being near Athens. 14 miles away to be precise, but I'll get into that later. The sanctuary of Eleusis being home to the mystery cult to Demeter and Persephone, which I have actually mentioned in my Eagle Bearer's Guide to the Eleuisinian Mysteries video if you would like to go and watch that for like a background on a bit more of the cult and the remains and stuff. Because today we're just talking about the tablet. The inscription upon it tells us that a woman called Ninnion dedicated it at the temple to the goddesses, who we can assume are Demeter and Persephone. I mean, Hecate is also kind of hinted at within the cult, and so is Seluna. Selene, not Seluna. That's Baldur's Gate. Getting in here deep.
I'm also God's favourite princess and the most interesting girl in the world.
Selene. But I'm getting ahead of myself. But most likely Demeter and Persephone. They are the two main ladies of this cult. And to break it down, there's sort of two main panels to the image. You've got the top triangle and then the main picture square in the centre. Symbolism is rife. Or is it? The top triangle features a goddess being served from some form of vessel by one of the initiates, most likely Ninnion. It's most likely Demeter or Persephone, or maybe Hecate. My money's on Demeter or Persephone because they're the most important two to the cult. It's worth mentioning this little sort of lunar phase that wraps around the middle of the image. I don't want to dive into this too much, but it's thought that a lot of the cult activity actually happened at night, which is where the ties to Selene comes in, not Seluna. Jesus. I'll link a paper below by Themis Dallas on the specific moon phase of this image, exploring the symbolism behind them and the possibility of them being the earliest depiction of earthshine, the phenomenon of earthshine, the light reflecting back off the earth and onto the moon. It's good stuff if you want to read it after this. Watch this video first though, then go and read it, but it's good paper. But I would like to really talk about the main actual image of the tablet, if that's alright with you. So the main panel shows the procession of initiates during the festival Eleusis. The initiates are led by Iacchus, which is thought to be some sort of iteration of Dionysus. We can see by the clothing they're a very androgynous figure, and Iacchus, Bacchus, Dionysus. It checks out to me, right? I'll include Dionysus wherever I want, thanks. But he leads the initiates to the goddesses. There's male and female initiates here. This is one of the cults that allowed sort of anyone to really join if they could pay and didn't have religious miasma around them. So women were actually allowed to join, which I like because a lot of the time women were kept out of stuff. And when it came to religion, women could have a more active part, either being priestesses or joining cults and that sort of thing. There's even cults that were women only. So it was one of the more open cults in that respect, as long as you could pay the entry fee, essentially. And we can even learn a lot from the way that these characters are depicted. The initiates are carrying sacred objects for the rituals, they're carrying torches, they're wearing wreaths and carrying plants, and they're all wearing dark robes as well. There's also a poppy present on the ground, the bottom of the image, which has a whole bunch of different symbolic ideas put onto it. Again, it's a mysteria cult, we're never going to know the full answer, and Ninnion is not here to tell us exactly the symbolism behind her image. One possible thought is that it references the flowers that Persephone was picking when she was abducted in the original myth of the cult, but I'm going to take you through the myth in a minute. But also drugs. There's possibly drugs involved in the cult. We know that the initiates drank a drink called the Kaikeion. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right at all. Which was a fermented barley drink mixed with some other stuff, which most likely had some sort of hallucinogenic, psychedelic effect. So it's kind of accepted that maybe part of this journey was you drink the drink, you have your little trip, right? And at the end you'd have this whitey ego death and you would see Persephone and Demeter at the end of it. And you would have this like connection with the goddesses at the end. These upper and lower panels probably represent as well in their own right the two different stages of initiation. There was the lesser mysteries celebrated in spring where the initiates would go and they would cleanse themselves in the river to sort of prepare for the greater mysteries, being a lot more secretive, celebrated in autumn, a whole 9-day affair. And this could represent Ninnion in life as being fully initiated as both of these parts, if that makes sense. She underwent both stages of the initiation and became a fully fledgling. So she was fully dedicated to her cause and I stan her for it. So overall she's given us a good idea of what the procession of initiates during the festival looked like. But why is that so impressive to us, really? Why does it really matter? Who cares about Ninnion? I do. Alright? To cut to the chase here, the inner workings of the cult were very, very secretive. Only initiates were allowed to know the ins and outs of what actually went on inside the cult, right? And the cult at Eleusis was so great and so well established and so popular that exposing said mysteries in the inner workings was actually punishable by death. For example, everyone's favourite Alcibiades, however you want to say his name. He was charged with blasphemy and exposing the mysteria at a private party in his life, amongst other crimes. But he wasn't killed for it though. They tried to take him to court for it, and he somehow, as he always does, wormed his way out of it. You want a video all about Alcibiades? You let me know. You'll probably get one anyway, but let me know. But Ninnion's tablet actually depicts part of the Eleuisinian festival, and it's the only piece of evidence we have physically which does so. We presume that that's the annual procession that took place from Athens to Eleusis. I mentioned this in my Eagle Bearers guide video, but just to give you a wee refresher. The procession went from Athens to Eleusis along the Sacred Way, which is 14 miles of walking. So it would have been a very public affair. It's not really part of the mysteries that you can keep a secret, because even those uninitiated would see this massive 14-mile long parade from one place to the other. So maybe with this tablet she's depicting the one part of her religion, her cult, that she's kind of allowed to show. I should mention this was pretty much like a harvest festival, right? Demeter being the goddess of agriculture and plants growing and all that loveliness and all that, right? And Persephone is essentially the embodiment of the seasons. I'm going to very quickly run through the myth that possibly is the founding myth for the cult of Eleusis. But the Homeric hymn to Demeter is getting its entire own video in another time where I can properly dive into it, and I want to break it down bit by bit. But not today. And I'm going to use the Hades characters for little images because I'm really enjoying that game and it's kind of lore accurate. Persephone is out one day picking flowers in a field with her wee pals, as she does. And Hades sees her from afar and he's like, I want a bit of you.
I want you.
That's her uncle, by the way. Ew. So she picks a flower. Some stories it's a narcissus flower, in some stories it's a poppy flower. Some stories don't even differentiate, they don't care. That's not the point. She picks this flower and Hades is holding the other end of it and she pulls him out the ground and he abducts her in his chariot and takes her away to Hades to be his bride. Demeter, her mother and sister of Hades, is raging. Absolutely full-on mother's rage, right? And she goes searching for 9 days and 9 nights. She takes the form of an old woman when she reaches Eleusis, and she's taken into the court of King Celeus, and she gets put in charge of looking after his little teeny tiny baby son, whose name I can't remember because it's not really that important. As a sort of gift, she tries to make the king's baby son an immortal by bathing him in fire and giving him this drink of sort of the barley concoction. But then the queen walks in and sees her son about to be put into flames and freaks out. Rightfully, to be honest, rightfully. She thinks she's trying to kill him for whatever reason. She's like, oh my god, you dozy old woman, what are you doing? But instead, Demeter takes the huff and she's like, how dare you insult me and interrupt me like that? I was trying to make your son immortal. I was doing you a favour. So in an apology, she instructs the king and his court to build her a temple on the site at Eleusis, which, hey, he must have done, because it was there. The king's other older son, Triptolemus, then grasses up Hades and is like, oh, by the way, I saw him take Persephone and boost down the hill and go in that wee cave and take her away. Then Zeus, who is not only brother to Hades, but also the dad of Persephone and brother to Demeter. I know, right, I get it, I know. He convinces Hades to give Persephone back, but by this point it's too late because he's already tricked her into eating pomegranate seeds, which basically means that she's part of the underworld, she's married, they've done the deed. You know what I mean? So they strike a bargain. For half the year, Persephone spends it in Hades with Hades, and the other half of the year she's up in Olympus with Demeter. And thus the seasons are born, because when Persephone is with her mum, Demeter's happy and all the plants are growing, the crops are thriving and all that. And then when Persephone makes her way back down to Hades, Demeter's sad and nothing grows and it's cold and it's nasty and horrible weather. And in thanks for this, Demeter teaches Triptolemus, the sun that grasps up Hades, the secrets of farming and also how she wants to be worshipped within her mysteries at Eleusis. So she gives him all the instructions for everything. And there you go. That's the founding myth of Eleusis, maybe. We don't know. We don't actually know if the cult fully stuck to that script necessarily. Or the same script, it might have been slightly different because we don't know these things. Love it. So the procession of initiates is depicted on the Ninnion tablet. So we at least have some sort of idea on how that looks. And it's also corroborated by a couple different ancient sources as well. But once they get to the temple, the initiates enter the telesterion, where we don't really know what happened next after that. Once they go in, the doors are shut in our faces because we're not initiated. But there's 3 possible stages of the sort of rites and initiative process that have been identified that we don't know much about, but we kind of guess. First off, there's the dromena, which means things done, probably like reenactments of the myth, recounting the myth. A lot of old Mysteria cults are big on their reenactments, so it'd be reenacting Persephone's sort of rebirth, going to Hades and coming back, in the sort of cyclical nature of that. The deikumena, so sorry if I'm saying any of these wrong by the way, which means things shown, which is the use of sacred ritual objects whilst these stories and that are being told. Objects which most likely are the same ones that Ninnion had drawn on her tablet that were carried in the procession. And finally the legomena, meaning things said, which is, stories being told, incantations, wee songs and all that we can assume were sung as these sort of other acts were going on. Because it's not sort of 3 stages, it sort of probably all happened at once. We don't know much about these stages, that's about it. There could have been more stages than that. They might not be that deep, it might not be that sort of segregated. We don't know. Again, there's the possible use of drugs, the whole ego death, I've seen God type thing maybe happened. There was definitely an emphasis on the cyclical nature of life and death and the harvest, and Persephone being sort of 1 foot in the afterlife, 1 foot in the real life, and how you can't really die, if that makes sense. Like the soul always will continue on and things like that. Big afterlife motives in nearly every mystery cult. I'll get round to all the different mysteria one by one. Okay, we're starting with Eleusis because I think it's easiest for my little brain. Afterlife, big deal. Making sure you go to the right one, making sure it's a happy one, making sure your soul can survive. The whole thing with the drugs as well was also really good because it meant that you couldn't really keep the mysteries straight, if that made sense. When Christianity was gaining popularity, there was a lot of people trying to talk down the Eleuisinian cult and sort of, they did it to all the religions really, try and sort of tarnish them so that you could be like, oh, but that religion's not as good as Christianity though, because they do this in their weird cult and they do this and they do that and their weird little sacrifices and this sort of thing. Just trying to sort of badmouth it. Eleusis was so tightly kept and weird that the Christians didn't really have a leg to stand on. The information that they did have was sort of too vague and too meaningless for any sort of proper persecution to follow, if that makes sense. Because the people were really good at keeping their mouths shut. Could never be me. Could never be me. I am a little yapper. One thing about me, I will yap. But alas, all good things must come to an end. I'm assuming it's good. I don't know. I wasn't initiated. I wasn't there. But in 392 CE, that's how long this cult went on for. Emperor Theodosius, who was Christian, finally put an end to the cult at Eleusis. That cult lasted a really, really long time and had a lot of initiates, and we still don't know much about it. That's incredible. A few years later, in 396 CE, the Visigoths trashed the temple. Boo! How dare you! The Ninnion tablet is the only piece of physical material evidence that we have depicting any sort of Eleuisinian cult activity at the moment. We know Ninnion dedicated it, but we don't know anything else about the woman behind this image. We don't know how she lived, we don't know how she died. Was she perhaps put to death for creating this image? Probably not. If this was considered grassing up part of the religion or whatever, surely they would have destroyed the tablet and killed her. They wouldn't have killed her and then went, actually, that's quite a nice wee thing she's drew there, we'll put that up in the temple. You know what I mean? They wouldn't keep it if they killed her. Surely. We don't know. Sorry, Hen. I wish we knew more. I really do. Like, we equally don't know about the mystery of the mysteries! The most popular cult in all of antiquity. The mystery cult that started them all. That lasted the longest and was, like, properly well established and brought into, like, politics and, like, big boy topics, you know? And we don't know a dicky bird. We know nothing. Not a peep got out, except for, I mean, there are people who were, like, there's records of people who did get put to death for talking about it. One would be right here. But in terms of being such a big cult with so many initiates and being so well established, nothing much has really trickled down to us. You know, there's not enough evidence for us to actually reconstruct it. Which is wild! We definitely know that it was a cult to Demeter and Persephone and had some sort of tie to Hades and the afterlife and the rebirth and the cycles of life and nature and the harvest and whoa, whimsical stuff like that, right? But the specifics will continue to elude us. Elude us at Eleusis. Haha. Whoa. 2 words that are similar to each other. Oh my god. So cheers to Ninnion for this teeny tiny little insight into the cult of Eleusis. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. Love you. Love you so much. Thank you. Thanks. And with that, I'm going to leave you. Let me know if you want more videos about any sort of Mysteria or specifically Eleusis. More videos about it are on the way whether you like it or not, but it's always nice to ask, isn't it? Don't forget to like, subscribe, let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comments as well. And ring the bell! Why don't you do that? Ring that wee bell, eh? One more notification in your sea of notifications is not going to do you any harm, is it? Cheers again for watching. Bye. And I'll see you all next Tuesday. If this even comes out on a Tuesday, I don't know. I'll see you next Tuesday.